to Virtuosi Concert's pre-concert chat for our third concert of our in-camera sessions. My name is Madeline Hildebrand, and I'm speaking today with pianist Naomi Woo, who is presenting such a beautifully crafted program titled Music for Home. This concert was recorded on March 7th and is being premiered on YouTube on March 20th at 7:30 p.m. The concert features the gorgeous piano and beautiful intimate corners of a home belonging to Bill and Irmgard Berg. Naomi is joining me today to talk about the music and concept for this program, Music for Home. So, hello, Naomi. And also, happy International Women's Day today. We are speaking on March 8th. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited to talk to you today. It was wonderful being present briefly yesterday for your recording session. Hearing a little bit about the program was exciting, and I'm excited to talk to you more about it now. So we're excited to present to you at the piano on the 20th, but can you tell our viewers today about the other hats you wear here in our city of Winnipeg? What has been keeping you busy these past few months?
Of course. Well, I am so delighted to have this new city of Winnipeg to call home. I moved here in September of 2019, and I am the assistant conductor of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. As well, in that role, I'm also music director of Sistema Winnipeg, which is an after-school music program run by the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra in schools. It's a daily after-school music education program that's totally free for students. And additionally, I am music director of the University of Manitoba Symphony Orchestra. So I'm actually speaking to you today from my office at the Des Hotels Faculty of Music. So I hop around the city a little bit, but I've been so grateful for these many hats, as you said, to wear, Madeline, in this city, because I've been so warmly welcomed by so many different communities. So many different musical communities in Winnipeg, and that's been a real joy.
Well, we are totally thrilled to have you here. I'm saying this as a musical colleague, but also as a friend, and you've been such an asset to the city this past year. So thanks for being here. Let's talk about the music on the program. There's so much to talk about. I know that we could probably sit here for an hour as pianist to pianist, but we will try to keep it. We'll try to keep ourselves within the time limit. So I hardly know where to begin. So just let me ask an overarching question. How did you come up with the theme Music for Home? What does home represent to you in this concert?
Well, I first started thinking about it when Virtuosi first asked me to play a recital. And this is right as the COVID-19 pandemic was at its peak here in Manitoba. Virtuosi was wanting to put concerts on, but typically invites so many incredible artists from all around the world, which of course is just not possible right now. And you at Virtuosi reached out to me and asked if I would be willing to put on a recital as part of a series really specifically crafted by local artists. And in the spirit of that theme of a recital series of people who are really from here and from Manitoba, I at first felt myself to be a bit of an interloper. I'm not really from here. I just moved here. But especially this year, I've spent so much time at home and so much time really exploring the outdoors, meeting new people. And so it felt like a way I could honor this request was to really think through how I've made Winnipeg my home, the people who've helped me make Winnipeg and Manitoba my home, and then just to reflect on this idea of home, especially at a time when we're all spending so much time in our own homes at the moment.
And I'd like to add, though, that being present yesterday, I saw how you went beyond this idea of a physical home and, Winnipeg as your home. It was inspiring to hear you talk about homesickness yesterday and about migration and about music that was intentionally written for home performance. So I think you're an inspiration when it comes to thematically programming. So I can't wait to see the whole thing on the 20th. Which brings me a bit to my next question. So I think, like I said, you're such an inspiration when it comes to representation of compositional voices. Looking at your program, I see Schubert and Grieg and Debussy. These are pillars of the classical canon, but I'm also seeing a lot of contemporary and living composers on your program as well. So I have a twofold question. How have you come to find these voices, and what is it about their music that speaks to you?
You know, a lot of the composers on the program are people that I have personal relationships to. And I think that one of the ways in which I make a home for myself in music and in the world is through friendship, through connection. And like, after all, what is music about but, you know, creating relationships with each other? So I can speak to a few of these musical friendships who have gone into the crafting of this program. Sun Keting is an absolutely wonderful Chinese composer who lives in London, and we met in London through a group that I'm still part of, a group called Tangram that performs and creates music of the Chinese diaspora. So it's a group of artists from all around the world who all have Chinese heritage. And the group explores sort of getting away from a binary between Western classical music on the one hand and Eastern Chinese music on the other hand, but rather presenting a really wide array of music that can and is being created by artists with Chinese heritage all around the world. So that's how I met Rocky. We have a really special relationship through that group. And so I was really delighted to be able to perform a piece of hers. Another composer on the program who is a dear friend is Luxembourgish composer Catherine Kantz. Catherine also lives in London, and we met when I was living in England. We met collaborating on a project together, an opera about the poet Anne Sexton. And we have gone on to do a whole bunch of projects together since then. And I have really enjoyed getting to know Catherine. She's an incredibly diverse composer. She writes so many different kinds of music. Often she works in theater, and a lot of her compositions have really strong theatrical elements. She also explores chance-based methods in such fun and playful ways. I've programmed a piece of hers before for violin, which involves a deck of cards, and each card has a different sort of musical idea on it, and you lay the cards out in an order, a bit like dominoes, and then play them in their order. She has a wonderful piece called Snakes and Ladders, where you lay out a snakes and ladders board on the ground, and then you actually play the game while playing your instruments. I mean, just so fun, her music. It's so fun,
Yeah.
and so playful. And she's just as fun and playful in person. The piece I chose is also fun and playful, but also has some gravitas to it as well. It's a piece based on an essay by Thomas Mann, the writer Thomas Mann, that he wrote when he was traveling for the very first time from Europe to North America. He was on the boat to New York. He was so excited for this journey. This is in the 30s or 40s. And he wanted to honor the journey by also choosing the literature that he read on his journey well. I do the same when I take a flight. I realize I really like a good book with me on a plane. I've never taken a boat across the Atlantic. But he took a boat across the Atlantic, and he decided to read Don Quixote while taking this boat. And he wrote a diary every day, both of what was going on the boat journey and what was going on in Don Quixote. So Catherine has masterfully translated this into a 45-minute voyage for piano. I'm just playing a few snippets of it. Wow. And then the final contemporary composer that I will share, who I have a friendship and a relationship with, is Karen Sonabaka, Métis composer from Manitoba, who now lives in Ontario, but of course has a very strong family connections still here, a very strong relationship to the city of Winnipeg, also with her roles in the city, like at Groundswell.
Mhm.
And Karen and I, when we first met, we bonded over the fact that we've also both lived in Cambridge in England.
Right.
We were kind of shocked to not have met each other sooner when we met here in Winnipeg. So those coincidences, meeting people with whom I have other things in common, have been a really like shockingly prevalent thing since
Mhm.
moving here to Winnipeg for me. I mean, I could go on and on about all of the strange coincidences that I've had with people here. And so Karen felt like a perfect fit for this program.
I feel proud as a Winnipegger to hear you speak like that. That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk just a little bit more about Karen's piece because this is a very exciting venture for Virtuosi. This is our first co-commission. So you and Virtuosi have commissioned this piece for this concert. So can you tell us what that's like to commission a piece from a composer, and what can you prepare us for what we will hear on the 20th?
Sure. Well, I was really excited to commission Karen. Karen writes a lot of music about her Métis heritage. And in thinking about the notion of home here in Winnipeg, I really did want to think about how this land is the homeland of the Métis Nation. So I really thought that Karen would be a good fit for her making that a part of the program. But it's really scary to commission a piece because then you send the composer off with an idea, and the next thing you know, a score shows up in your email inbox, and you have no idea what it's going to be. You also have no idea how hard it's
All right.
going to be. How much time is this going to take to learn? So it's scary. It involves a lot of trust, I think, on
Mhm.
both
Yeah.
parties. I think I'm not a composer myself, and I think the idea of finishing something and then sending it off to someone else to do something with it, that is so scary to me. So I really
Mhm.
admire the level of trust that
Mhm.
composers have
Yeah.
and the gift.
I've never thought of it like a vulnerable experience, but it kind of is, isn't it? For both parties involved, the
Yeah,
player and the composer.
yeah,
Beautiful.
absolutely.
So lastly, I wanted before we go to our audience rapid fire questions, I love that you have programmed Schubert, and Schubert is such an icon of music that is played at home, meant for home. Some of our viewers might be familiar with Schubertiads, which were like home music parties. Now, you've managed to program Schubert without actually programming any of Schubert's piano music. Which I think is in itself so playful. Can you just briefly talk about your Schubert set that doesn't have any Schubert's piano music?
Sure. Well, I love Schubert, and a big part of what I love about playing piano is working with singers. It's just such a special joy, and especially Schubert, especially German art song, because the poetry is so magnificent and so wonderful. So you play a not just a dual role, a really multifaceted role as pianist and collaborator and interpreter of poetry and translator. I mean, so many beautiful things that you get to do as an art song pianist. I know that you are also a pianist of art song, and it's just such a special thing that we get to do. So I love Winterreise. It's really a piece that's very, very close to my heart. It's also a piece I've been thinking about a lot this winter, and going on lots of walks in the snow and in the ice, and not my life not quite as tragic as the poet of Winterreise, but nonetheless it's a piece that really magically captures the season. Gefallene Tränen, the song that I transcribed for piano, tells about like a frozen tear. I mean, it's so tragic, and yet at the same time, Winnipeg is the first place I've ever lived where I discovered that yes, in fact, your eyelashes do freeze.
Yes.
So happens.
Manitoba mascara. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard that. That's so funny. So
So you
That,
have
that
you have a Schubert art song, but then you also have this very unusual piece, or maybe it's not so unusual, but it came to fruition in an unusual way by composer Rosemary Brown.
yes, that's right. Rosemary Brown lived in England, and she thought of herself as a musical medium. So she was visited in what she called them transmissions or seances by composers from the past who dictated new works of music to her. And so this piece is a moment musical that Rosemary Brown transcribed, dictated to her in 1970 something by Schubert. Um, Absolutely unusual, and yet in many respects I feel so much not unlike the process that we go through as performers and interpreters, musicians. We spend so much time alone at home thinking about what's going on in the heads of the composers.
Right, right. Even pre-COVID, right? We spent a lot of time on our own thinking about these composers. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So yes, Rosemary Brown, and it's a lovely little musical. And something Rosemary Brown said about her transmissions is she said, it's very hard to get a transmission right. So if they don't sound perfect, if there's some mistakes, maybe it's just that maybe it's not that the work isn't good. Maybe it's that I missed something. I didn't transcribe it perfectly. So if my performance,
Wow.
if some problems with it, just transmission is very hard.
Interesting.
And then the other little Schubert piece, well, it's not so little, it's actually quite long. But the other Schubert piece I included is a piece by the Winnipeg born composer Anne Southam. The piece is called Remembering Schubert. And it's a kind of minimalist, like deep dive into just lush G major harmonies that you can just swim in and just get lost in. It's a really nice antithesis to Schubert, actually, because Schubert often, I play especially the art song, it's often quite miniature and quite compact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like she takes a little moment of Schubert, a little one of Schubert's like beautiful moments, and then just blows it up.
Mm-hmm.
And just expands it to the size of a prairie landscape with
Yeah.
a big sky, and you can just bask in it. I'm mixing my metaphors all over the place here.
She takes a micro and makes a macro, right? It's just, it's beautiful. I've only heard snippets of the piece. I'm so excited to just let it wash over me for a full 14 minutes. Okay, so that is a really wonderful idea of what we're about to hear on the 20th. Thank you so much for telling us these details about the program. And last, I'm going to go into 2 questions from our audience, and I'm going to save the rest for the actual concert where we will ask them to you in the chat. So Here come 2 questions. Do you have any pre-concert routines?
I eat a banana.
Me too. All right. And second one, do you like to listen to as many variations of a piece's performance prior to learning it?
Oh, wow. Sometimes. Yeah. Especially, sometimes I like to, if it's a piano piece, I do like to listen to a lot to know what it's like and if I'm interested in learning it. I feel like there's often a phase in the learning process when it is really important to distance oneself from other people's versions. But in general, I'm so curious to know how other people hear the same sounds and the same notes. And then it's the wonderful thing about being a performer is that we do get to do things differently every time.
I love that answer and I love that question because the controversy is that if you listen to somebody's recording too often, you're just going to end up imitating them and not making it your own, right? But I think that there is also merit in listening just like you say, at a certain time and then maybe backing off a little bit. I love that. Well, I look forward to asking you a few more questions in our chat on the 20th. And also, this was such a wonderful chat. Thank you so much for informing our audience about what they're going to hear on the 20th. And thank you so much for just crafting a beautiful program that was so fun to talk about.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be performing here with these such wonderful company in this whole series of concerts. I'm so in awe of the wonderful programs for this whole music in camera.
In camera sessions, yeah.
All of these, I mean, they've just been so gorgeous. I've so enjoyed listening to them. So thank you so much for including me.
Oh, our pleasure. All right. See you in the chat.